Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Reed Show right here on the Barroom Network. Follow us on social media. Follow me at The Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. And, of course, follow the Barroom Network at Barroom Network. And wherever you get your podcast, remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. We're on Apple, Spotify, and, of course, if you're watching live on YouTube, you get the luxury of looking at mine and Ross's hair, which are oh so different, and our backgrounds. And we're in full January here, just all the vibes, my friends. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today on the show. Bears heavy, as Ben Johnson is in as the head coach for the Chicago Bears. Dive into that and the offseason expectations for him building his coaching staff and the roster, of course. Lots of questions in place, even after getting Ben Johnson in there. And reactions to the McCaskies and Kevin Warren pulling the trigger on their guy and Ben Johnson. Then we'll preview the, conference playoffs as well in the NFL. Bills and Chiefs, and then the Eagles and the Commanders, a nice divisional showdown. It's $600 some to get into that slugfest with young Jaden Daniels against Jalen Hurts and company and the Eagles. It will be a lot of fun and surprises along the way. Talk maybe about the Oscar nominations. I know Ross is pumped about that. And, of course, I'm joined by my boy, my co-host, treasurer of the Ben Johnson fan club. He's watched the Brutalist record 7 times already, which translates to a little over 24 hours of life, and the biggest hater of tortellini I know. Ladies and gentlemen, Ross Reed, what's shaking?
That's right. I got my Brewers tickets actually next Saturday, February 1st at the Alamo Draft House. So that is going to be a 3-hour, 45-minute plus 15-minute interlude.
Oh, my God. Is there an interlude?
There's a 15-minute intermission.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Although you don't need it when you're at the Alamo because they give you all the food and the drinks like to your chair.
But I'd like to stretch my legs and rush to the bathroom for 15 minutes. I don't, it's a 3.5-hour movie, as you mentioned, so you're going to inevitably miss something, and you don't have to time it out, based on spoilers or whatever. Neither here nor there. It's supposed to be great. A24, obviously not missing. They're a powerhouse, but that's neither here nor there. We are leading with Bears, and apologies to Luke, who said this may seem a bit late, but we didn't have a show till tonight, Luke. So you can log off if you like, or stay with us, my man.
We had like 45 reactions from different people yesterday. You let it breathe for a minute. We're like the limoncello at the end of the with the digestive at the end of all the hot takes.
The digestive. We're the same buka, if you will.
Yes.
You don't really let the buka breathe, but we're excited either way because we've been talking about it at length, even during the season, obviously, like even before Matt Eberflus was getting dismissed, just talking about, what are they going to do? Because we know this guy is on the chopping block at this point. We knew that, obviously all credit to Thomas Brown and picking up the pieces and getting a dub to start the 2025 games off. But we knew that the golden goose, as it were, was Ben Johnson, getting him in an offensive mind, and in the vein of a Sean McVay or in the vein of, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, etc. The Bears wasted no time, and neither did either Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn, to jump ship from the Lions coaching staff faster than you could say tortellini. And so they jumped ship, and again, Bears got their guy. I feel like, again, on paper, it's the best case scenario that you could hope for as far as an offensive-minded head coach coming in with a young quarterback, former number 1 overall pick quarterback, and Caleb Williams. Certainly, he's still got his work cut out for him with this roster, as there's a lot of questions in the start of 2025 here and in the offseason, as it's a long way from training camp or any of that being solidified and questions who's going to stay, who's going to go. But I mean, we know that Thomas Brown, as far as the coaching staff that Ben Johnson will have in place, we know that Thomas Brown won't be coming back. Defensive coordinator Eric Washington, and interim OC coach and wide receiver coach Chris Beatty, quarterback coach Kerry Joseph, offensive line coach Chris Morgan. So you look at it widely as a fresh start, pretty much, for the players to come back to compete for the Bears in 2025 as a whole different coaching staff, a whole different philosophy than Matt Eberflus and those before, if they played for a longer tenure, if a guy like a Cole Kmet or one of the longer tenured players. But, DC, some names have been floated around like Dennis Allen. It's just very early, I feel like, when you're talking about the coaching staff in place. But make no mistake that Ben Johnson is certainly going to, have carte blanche as far as this coaching staff is concerned, and building what he thinks is going to be a real competitive football team in the North. A step in the right direction, right? That's my knee-jerk reaction. It comes with, that sort of hesitancy and just a little bit of optimism, obviously, as every season starts that way, off season at least. But I was really excited to hear it. It's a funny story, of course, of Kevin Warren, being at a restaurant. Guy sends him some Don Julio with a bar napkin that says "Hire Ben Johnson." Shout out to that guy, hilarious. And it's, just as far as the organization is concerned, when we think they can't really adapt to change and can't show change, it's a positive look now to bring in a guy like Ben Johnson, who we knew they courted highly. It shows that ability to adapt and change as an org. Obviously, a lot of questions. Ben Johnson, already in the top, 7-10 of coaching for salary with $13 million, which is basically what we said, basically give him a blank check and see what happens. But, if you're, as far as the view overall too of the team, if you're a free agent, why wouldn't you want to come play for Ben Johnson and play with Caleb Williams? This young team is going to be exciting. Take this last year in the competitive games for what they were. But Ben Johnson, that guy, what was your reaction, Ross, to him, and what do you got on Ben Johnson right now?
Yeah, I mean, this was a complete slam dunk for the Chicago Bears. And I think a lot of us were very skeptical that they were going to be able to get this done, because we've been Bears fans for a long time. I'm 43 years old. I'll be 44 years old this year. I've seen them do the retread thing with the John Fox. I've seen them do the weird kind of nerdy guy with Mark Trestman. I've seen them. I remember when they passed up Bruce Arians, who was, assistant was coach of the year. I remember when they botched the Dave McGinnis thing, when he thought that he had a head coaching job, and they turned their backs on them. So, obviously this is a different page for this Bears organization, even down to the fact that they had private planes flown out for not only Ben Johnson, but Mike McCarthy. They never done that before in team history. You put that in perspective, when they hired Ryan Poles to be the general manager, they put him on a in business class on a normal flight. So they're stepping up a little bit. They're kind of going into a new century, and they're trying to act like a big boy operation. I mean, it's awesome when you see billionaires wake up one day and say, "Oh shit, I'm a billionaire and I can actually spend some money and go get what I want." And that's what they did when they got Ben Johnson. It was really cool to hear him talk during his presser. He was giving you a lot of what you're supposed to say. I always wanted to be here. This is the perfect place for me and my family. He even went down and said, I knew I wanted to be here when I went to go visit Wrigley Field during the summers, which is cliche bullshit. But at the end of the day, he was the number one guy in the market, and they secured the bag. And that's the most important thing. You've got the first overall pick from last year in Caleb Williams, who has all the upside in the world. He has all the talent in the world to be a top 5 quarterback in this league. You need to go out there and secure it and get the number one offensive mind available. And that was Ben Johnson. That Lions offense, and we'll talk about their playoff loss in a couple of minutes, but, head by a guy like Jared Goff, who a lot of us don't, consider to be a top quarterback, was still top 5 in the league for quite a bit of time there. And they were dominant in the run game. They were awesome on the quick passing. Their offensive line was very proficient. And I love to hear him say, whatever offense I ran with Detroit and Goff is not what I'm bringing to Chicago. We're going to rip this thing down from the studs, and we're going to build around Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, and Roman Dunze, who all three of those guys were there in the audience, and Cole Kmet, and really bring a proficient offensive style to Chicago, which I think is necessary. If you want to win a Super Bowl this day and age, you've got to compete with, look at who's left this weekend. Jaden Daniels in that offense has been humming, right? And Saquon Barkley and that offensive line has been on fire. And you got to go up against Josh Allen, who's the league MVP. You got to go up against Pat Mahomes, who could win a three-peat this year and solidify himself as top 2-3 best quarterback of all time before he's 30 years old. You need some firepower in the league. And this is an investment for the Bears as they want to try and get a new stadium, their first overall pick from last year. And I absolutely love the hire. We're going to see some of the assistant names trickle out over the next couple of weeks. They were able to get Rooney Rule compliant today on the defensive coordinator spot by talking to Vikings passing game and DB coach Durante Jones. I fully expect for them to move forward with Dennis Allen probably no later than end of day by tomorrow. So you'll have your defensive coordinator there. It sounds a lot like they're not going to be able to get Darren Rizzi, the special teams coach / interim head coach from the Saints. It sounds like he's going to go to his old pal, Sean Payton. But they're going to be able to keep Richard Hightower, which I think Richard Hightower is a very good special teams coach. I think they got some personnel moves to make on special teams, but in large, he's a good special teams coach. We'll see what they're able to do with the offensive line coach. I think that's going to be the next key hire after he retains Hightower and Dennis Allen. But again, complete slam dunk. And now, we've got a lot of momentum now going into free agency and then, of course, into the draft.
Yeah, no question, Ross. And chime in the comments if you like the Ben Johnson hire, who you want to see offensively, defensively, as far as coaching goes. What's next for the Bears? And certainly, Heckler, we will get to relishing in the Lions choking in the playoffs, although they ran up against a good Washington squad that's in the NFC Championship. So we'll see how they perform there. But yeah, you come with concerns. Certainly, I think, Ross, we talk about him being a home run on paper. He's a great offensive mind. He did everything right as far as the press conference is concerned. It was cool to see DJ Moore in there and Cole Kmet, Caleb Williams, Roman Dunze, the guys who are going to be coached by him exclusively this coming season, and showing out for his head coach, already getting off on the right foot. Just by the way, Caleb Williams rocking that duster. His fashion can't be touched. It's pretty amazing. Rocking that leather. But yeah, you come with concerns at the first crack of head coaching. I think that's the only sort of I don't know, negative is walking in if you're Ben Johnson. But the numbers are so impressive and they don't lie as far as Detroit goes. Obviously, at an elite offensive line, that's, we'll talk about that in a moment, building that out, Ross. But, turned that franchise. He was part of that rebuild with Dan Campbell as far as Detroit going from worst to one of the top offenses in the league, turning Jared Goff's numbers all the way up. Extremely potent offense. Obviously they're loaded with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs and guys like that. But, you need to just see what Ben Johnson said in the press conference. And I feel like it really does help kick it off right. I liked his quote, "We're going to push, we're going to challenge." And along with those high standards, there's also going to be a high level of support as well. Everybody in this building is going to be all about helping you guys out. How do you become the best versions of yourselves? That's what it's going to be about from start to finish. When you walk in, it's going to be crystal clear. Communication, the structure, and consistency, that will never waver. It feels like that's directly addressing kind of what Matt Eberflus had instilled in just the dysfunction of this last year. You got to get that out. Really, he wasted no time, as far as that press conference is concerned.
He did. He took some subtle jabs at Matt Eberflus throughout the conference. Throughout the press conference. He said, listen, when we were preparing at the start of the season, we circled the Bears as a team that we thought was going to give us fits. And there's enough talent on this roster. They should have had more wins than they ended up with. I thought that was a direct shot at Matt Eberflus, at Shane Waldron, at the coaching staff. This Bears team, they regressed a little bit this year in terms of wins from the year before, but the talent was supposed to be better. That is a direct reflection on the coaching staff. We've since heard from Ryan Poles and other people around the organization saying that they weren't prepared to start the season as early as going into training camp, that there were mistakes. And veteran players have said that there was very little accountability. And so it's refreshing to hear Ben Johnson say, we're going to clean this up. We're going to hold each other accountable. It's going to be a lot of tough love on this team, because that's how we're all going to get better. And I fully believe that. There's a lot of, what we heard already. This dude's a hard ass, and he might not look like it on the sidelines from what we see, but there's been stories. He's not afraid to get in guys' faces. We talked about John Skipper, the swing tackle on the Lions, who, hint, I think will be a Chicago Bear next year. He's a free agent. And the guy will tell you he will get in the faces of these offensive linemen and chew them out to get them on the same page. And it's good to see. I think we forget at the end of the day, just because guys are professional athletes, these guys have been in a structured system and have been held accountable since they started playing this game at the age of 9-10 years old. And they have felt that all the way through. So when they don't see that, just because they get $20 million in bank and they turn 25, that's still a massive red flag. You still need to hold professional athletes accountable. They want it. They seek it out. They tell you that all the time. That's what the leader of men bullshit really means at the end of the day. It just means we need you to hold us accountable day in and day out so we can be good at our jobs. And I think Ben Johnson will be able to do that.
Well, it's still a young roster, obviously starting with Caleb Williams at quarterback, and Johnson addressed Caleb, said, quote, "There's no doubt Caleb played a large component in my decision. He's a phenomenal talent that had as many quarterbacks do an up and down rookie year. Where I see my role as a supporter of him, this offense will be calibrated with him in mind. We're going to build this thing. This is not simply a dropping of a previous playbook down on the table and starting there. Nope, we're ripping this thing down to the studs. We're going to build it out with him first and foremost, and then with the pieces around him next." And so obviously begs the question, you alluded to Skip maybe becoming a Chicago Bear next season as an offensive lineman / tight end, perhaps. Big Skip, that line, again, like I mentioned, was loaded. Matt Focchisi said is the Lions offensive line coach coming. But you better believe that Ben Johnson has some good assistants in mind to build his staff around. And the big concern is putting the personnel out now to help his vision become a reality, as far as protecting Caleb Williams and paving run lanes like he did in Detroit. And it's not as simple as replicating what Detroit does. Obviously, you have those playmakers in place already. With a guy like DeAndre Swift, who had a fine season, DJ Moore, you want to utilize Cole Kmet. You want to utilize those guys who are going to be there going forward, and obviously Caleb Williams. But protection is going to be at a premium. We feel that obviously they'll draft a tackle at, maybe not obviously, but it looks like the way that things would shake out, any edge rusher, defensive lineman will probably be gone by the 10th pick overall, which the Bears have, which, is their biggest need is either, center or tackle, looking at that right now. By the way, 4 picks in the top 72 of the draft ain't bad. Shout out to Ryan Poles, who can help redeem his image in 2025 by making adjustments to that roster now. But again, going back to what I talked about as far as appealing to the free agent market, you want to play for a guy like Ben Johnson like this in this situation where Caleb Williams is going into his second year. He's building off some confidence and some really close losses, some nail biters, and he's took his lumps for sure. He wants to get that sack number down from the 50s, of course, but also take the pressure off of Caleb Williams by paving those run lanes. I mean, that's how Jared Goff was able to throughout the season. Find Jameson Williams or find Amon St. Brown or any of these options he had offensively to move the ball so well for Detroit. So I'm curious to see, now going forward, certainly how this coaching staff shakes out. It won't be, it could be the next Ben Johnson, whoever he gets at OC or passing coordinator. We don't know, but he's obviously tuned in. He's ready for a fresh start. His first crack at head coaching with this franchise is going to be it's going to be a roller coaster. He's not going to get it right away. Do I think he could compete? It begs the question: can he compete with the Vikings and Detroit and the Packers right away? I think absolutely. There's no reason to say no to that, especially because Detroit just had 2 of their biggest coordinators depart. I think that's huge. I mean, you can say the roster's in place is still very loaded. I think they are, and Dan Campbell stays there. But the Vikings don't know what they're doing. Are they paying Sam Darnold? And the Packers, is Jordan Love the answer? We don't know. So it's going to be exciting to watch this division next year too. But focusing on the offseason, What are the repercussions now, Ross, and what do you want to see get done ASAP?
Well, ASAP, he's got to fill out his coaching staff. And so he's going to work on that within the next week or so. He's going to put some feelers out there. Like I said, I already think that Dennis Allen is going to be a lock for the defensive coordinator. I think Richard Hightower is going to come back as special teams coach. So he's going to piece together his offensive staff. Offensive line coach is going to be a very important hire. It doesn't sound like Hank Fraley is going to come from Detroit. I know the question was asked earlier in the chat about how many guys he's going to pluck from Detroit. I don't think he's going to pluck that many. He's already coming within the division. He doesn't want to pull too much from his old friend Dan Campbell's staff. And I don't think he has to be honest with you. Again, this is going to be a new scheme. So I think a lot of people are saying, let's bring in as many offensive coaches from Detroit. That's not the case. This is a new scheme. This is not the Detroit scheme that's coming over to Chicago. This guy is a brilliant mathematician. His brother graduated from MIT. He's smart enough. He's going to concoct a brand new system and to find the people that he needs to build this out around Caleb Williams. Can the Bears compete next year in that division? You have Caleb Williams. You have Ben Johnson. In my opinion, Caleb Williams is the most talented quarterback in the NFC North, bar none. And I think we saw it play out within the playoffs in the end of the season. You saw what Goff does in the playoffs. That's typical Jared Goff football game. We saw with Sam Darnold and how he finished the year. It was rough for him as well. I don't think Kevin O'Connell said in his presser, I wish Sam nothing but the best after what he did for us. That means, Sam, bye-bye. You're gone. I got JJ McCarthy. I'm not paying you $100 million to shit the bed for me this year. I definitely don't trust Jordan Love as well. There's one name for me going into the offseason for Chicago Bears. There's one name. And I've got some good info already that this guy can be had if the Bears want him. And it's offensive guard. It's Trey Smith from the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the one guy that you need to walk away from this offseason on your roster, in my opinion. Remember, Trey Smith, drafted by the Chiefs, brought in by the Chiefs. Who was there when he was brought in? Ryan Poles was on the staff at the time when they brought him into Kansas City. Trey Smith also played right along next to Darnell Wright in college at the University of Tennessee. Those guys lined up right next to each other. Trey Smith is the number one guard on the free agent market in the league right now. When you look at the free agency list in terms of top 25, he is right at the top. Maybe you can put T. Higgins up there above him in terms of, who's a better available free agent. But Trey Smith is right at the top. You have to come away, for me, in my opinion, from free agency with Trey Smith as your next right guard. You have a lot of money to play with in free agency. If you go ahead and draft Trey Smith, you open up a wide variety of things to do now in the draft and other spots. In my opinion, a slam dunk for me is if the Bears can come out of this with Trey Smith playing at right guard, and then you're able to draft Will Campbell. He's playing left tackle right now at LSU, but I think he kicks into guard in the NFL. His arm is a little bit shorter, and then you run an offensive line of Braxton Jones, Will Campbell. You can even keep Shelton if you want to. You can run it back with Ryan Bates if you want to. Trey Smith, Darnell Wright. You took your offensive line from a solid 5-6 to now you're at a good 8-9. And that would be a major, major win for the Bears this offseason.
Yeah, I agree. And one more quote. I know I've had a lot, but DJ Moore said about the $13 million salary. Shoot, that's a lot of money. But when you find the right person to lead the team and the right mindset, money isn't an object. And he hit it right on the head as far as Ben Johnson. And I know that he wanted a more supportive figure in Caleb Williams' development. Not that Matt Eberflus wasn't that guy, certainly respected in the league, but he didn't really fit with how you would want to develop Caleb Williams going forward. I feel, and we saw it this last season. He got a tough draw for sure. But Ben Johnson in now. Some of the questions in the comments: is Dennis Allen coming? There's a lot of names, just like Rizzy. I feel like there's a lot of suitors.
Rizzy's not coming. Dennis Allen is coming.
Yeah, Rizzy is sought after. We are, already in place, like you talked about, Hightower likely being retained. But Dennis Allen be a home run at defensive coordinator would be quite nice. Can we bring back Tevin Jenkins? We talked about this recent episodes too. It looks like no other team would want him or wanted to pay him big money, so he's going to be on sort of less money scale here. The thing too of talking about free agency it's very cap friendly offseason. I think that certainly the Bears have a lot of money to maneuver, and if they want to throw the most money at a guard or a tackle, they can do that. And building protection for Caleb Williams, you're not going to turn it around like the Eagles of the world or Detroit offensive lines of the world right away in this next offseason, but I think you can do a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, again, you pay Trey Smith $27 million a year. That's a perennial all-pro right guard that you put next to you, your offensive lineman that you drafted in the first round from a couple years ago. You lock up your right side for the next 10 years. That is, like you said, money well spent, right? And then you've got to get some depth. You've got to get some youth on that line. I'm a big fan of bringing in Will Campbell if he's there on the board. Draft him, allow him to play left guard. You can still go interior line, or you can go left tackle if you want to in the second round. Remember, you've got 2 picks. You've got your own pick. You've got the Carolina Panthers pick as well. I talked about Skipper probably coming in as a swing tackle as well. So not only does it matter the 5 guys that you put in front, but we've seen throughout the NFL, especially for the Bears, guys get hurt often. So the depth matters as well. You need to have guys. Absolutely. So Kieran, Amadije is not your swing tackle next year when he was supposed to be a project redshirt player. You need to have some depth on the offensive line as well. So I think that they're going to address that. I think Ben Johnson knows that, and he's going to go in there with Ryan Poles, and they're going to attack it hard in both free agency and the draft. Just to hit on the coaches' money thing, DJ Moore is saying that's a lot of money. It is. It's a lot of money for the Chicago Bears, but this is Chicago. This is the 3rd largest market in the nation. But when you factor in the fact that both of the top 2 markets have 2 teams, Chicago is a pretty big market that has 1 team. I mean, put this in perspective. Sean Payton makes $18 million a year, and Harbaugh makes $16 million a year, right? And McVay makes $14 million a year. So all of a sudden, and yes, those guys are very accomplished coaches. I'm not saying Ben Johnson is any one of those guys, but I am saying is spend the goddamn money to get your guy. Like, it's okay. Act like you're in Chicago for a change. Act like this is Chicago and spend some damn money and get it done. And so I'm happy that they spent the money on the coach, and I'm happy that they flew him out on a private jet and all the things that you do when you're a big boy, multi-billion-dollar organization.
Yes, no question. They handle it well. On the flip side, I mean, could you imagine if Mike McCarthy had come in? I feel like this would be a very different chat on this show and throughout this week on the Bar Room. And Mike McCarthy, negative things to say, but it's a completely different mentality, I think, if you go with Mike McCarthy. So going back to the organization, it helps my perception of, obviously the McCaskies and then Kevin Warren. Kevin Warren now is also, just as focused on the stadium as ever, and keeping it at the lakefront potentially. And then, having Arlington Heights as sort of a plan B, as it were. But I've had a little bit of renewed faith, I have to say, with Ben Johnson getting the bag now, and we'll see Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson going forward, how they can tool this roster in the offseason. I'm very curious. And Ben Johnson, hopefully you just get to swap estates on the lake with Matt Eberflus and call it a day there with your 3 kids and wife. Nice looking young family, 38 years young.
Absolutely. And again, also credit to him. He busted his ass. He moved up the ranks. He was very selective. Yep, in the job. So very deserving for him and his family. And this just feels different. And as somebody that's gone through, I remember, my youngest memories of when Mike Ditka was fired, and then they were able to bring in Dave Wanstead, who was the hot coordinator at the time, coming off a Super Bowl win with the Dallas Cowboys as the defensive coordinator. And I've seen a lot of head coaches in my lifetime. I've seen Wanstead, and I've seen we talked about Trustman, we talked about Lovey. Obviously, there's just so many different names. We talked about the Dave McGinnis fiasco, and so it's really good to see. This felt different watching him during that press conference. I never saw a person with so much confidence, so much conviction, so much control of the room, and that Chicago media that can be very brutal at times. And he walked away from that in a very high regard. I think that's a very good sign.
Yeah, no question. Get Matt Nagy out of your head, folks. This is not Matt Nagy.
It's not even close to say. That's just a
Ben Johnson experience, man.
Yeah, and that's a very sloppy comparison. Ben Johnson has constructed his own offenses from scratch and has done things. Matt Nagy was running a Hall of Famer's offense. He wasn't even running it. Andy Reid still calls the plays on that sideline. So not even. It's a very apples to oranges comparison.
He went crawling right back to Andy.
Yes.
He'll be playing Sunday with the Chiefs, or we'll be calling the plays from Mahomes, or taking care of him, taking care of his shoes. We've had a lot on the Bears. Let's switch focus to the conference championships in the NFL. Of course, the divisional round, Chiefs beating the Texans rather soundly to get into the conference championship. I know that the refs loving Mahomes was that narrative that people love, but the fact remains that the Chiefs are just a very loaded team, and they are that good. They play their best football come January. And then the Lions, as Heckler pointed out earlier, to lose 45-31, it's just a product of Jaden Daniels being unstoppable and putting his best game of football on display. Was really, really impressive, obviously, against a great Lions team that maybe did not have the benefit of momentum, with Washington coming off that Tampa win to go into Detroit and just stuff them 45-31. But that's also, again, to the Lions, losing the coordinators is one thing, but you also, you had the coordinators in that game, but I should say more that defense was just so banged up throughout this year and into the playoffs. You lose Aiden Hutchinson, you wonder what they would be like full strength. And to the folks that say, the haters in Detroit, saying that Ben Johnson, lost them the game. He didn't throw those interceptions, certainly. It's just a weak narrative. The salt. But then Eagles had a close one against the Rams, getting into the conference championship 28-22. And then the Bills and the Ravens, that Mark Andrews drop will certainly haunt him. Lamar Jackson's sick of this coming up short too. But it's really one of the, the matchups we wanted for sure, as far as the Bills and Chiefs into the conference championship this Sunday. But I feel like the game I want to watch more is that Commanders-Eagles game. I'm just curious to see if the Eagles can come close to stopping Jaden Daniels and what a force he has become in this league. Just took the league by storm. And it makes you got to have a little bit of jealousy if you're the Bears seeing this. But again, completely different coach in place, completely different offense in place. You can't compare it. But Jaden Daniels, the real deal, certainly. It's just one game away from the Super Bowl at this point. If he wins against Philly, it's just very, very impressive. And Philly to game plan for him. They have Jalen Hurts to practice against. I believe they signed one of Washington's backup quarterbacks or third string quarterbacks to try to plan for him. That they take this game very seriously. They've come up short before. They've had the whole narrative this season with Nick Sirianni and company that they are pretenders more or less. But in their stadium, I feel like it certainly goes through the Eagles. The NFC has this whole time. I predicted Eagles and Chiefs at the beginning of the season, and they look like that top NFC team for a very good reason. What are you going to watch for in that Washington-Philly game, Ross? And how do you think either team pulls it off?
Yeah, I think for me, kudos to Washington, number one, for winning that game last week. That Lions team, a couple things. Number one, you can't turn the ball over like Jared Goff did. And you can't make those kind of mistakes, especially when you're at home, especially when you're the number one seed like that. You just cannot do that. He picked the worst time ever to go full Jared Goff. I also thought that they were just completely decimated on defense. The Lions were, and they lost another cornerback at the beginning of the game. He broke his arm. And that allowed guys like Terry McLaurin and Diami Brown to just kind of run free. They were completely decimated. So, but, listen, Jaden Daniels made plays when he was supposed to. What I'm watching for is, how does that translate now outdoors in the cold, against a very, very ferocious defensive line in the Philadelphia Eagles, led by Jalen Carter and what he did last week, right? And you've got Josh Sweat, you've got Jalen Carter, and you've got just a nasty, nasty defense to me. And that's where I start to wonder, are the Commanders going to be able to score more than 20 points against this ugly, ugly Eagles defense outdoors in the cold weather. We've never seen Jaden Daniels play in a really cold weather game. And I don't know if the Commanders are going to be able to slow down arguably the best offensive line in football and certainly the best running back in football. And if I'm the Eagles, everybody's talking trash about Jalen Hurts throwing only 100 and something 100 and some yards a game. Okay, and
Doesn't
got
matter.
Saquon Barkley. I mean, you got Saquon Barkley. If Saquon Barkley wants to rush for 200 yards a game, why would you ever want to pass the football? And so that's kind of the luxury you have when you sign a guy like Saquon Barkley and you put him behind that offensive line. I don't think the Commanders, who are not, they're not great on defense. They haven't been all year. I don't know if they're going to be able to slow down that rushing game. And I fully expect the Eagles to do what they have been doing this year, kind of what the Chiefs have been doing as well, which is just bleed that clock out. We're going to go on these ass kicking, back breaking 12, 13 yard drives that just, are 80 yards and just chew up clock. And then we're going to hand it to our running back. We're going to push our quarterback in the end zone for 7 points. And then we're going to force you on the other side to try and score to match us and get these touchdowns. And by the way, in the second half, there goes Saquon Barkley. And he just busts off an 80-yarder when your defense is tired. He does that every game now. And so it's going to be really tough for me to see the Commanders. There's also division rivals. And I know the Eagles do not want to lose to a division rival in the playoffs. So it's going to be tough to see the Commanders, in my opinion, match up well against them. But they had an amazing year. They're playing with house money right now.
Yeah, they're on a roll. I think there's something again to be said about that momentum that they've built from Tampa, beating the number 1 seed, and now going into Philly. They're playing all away games, obviously in Lincoln Financial Field. Philly fans get wild. It's gonna be 40 degrees. Going to be a little colder, but not. The element shouldn't be snow games like last Sunday. You talked about Saquon Barkley, and that's that big X factor. He's just able to take pressure off Jalen Hurts. They can push when they have 3rd and short. But really, just that no one has shown an ability to stop Saquon Barkley this season and in this playoffs so far. And that defense is the best defense in the league remaining right now, too. I know the Chiefs are no slouch, and we'll talk about the Bills and Chiefs in a moment. But that's the difference maker, is those two big things to take something from Ross is that you have Saquon Barkley and you have that defense. Jalen Carter, a game wrecker, in that secondary, able to match up very well with Washington's weapons, a vet like Zach Ertz. Talk about a game where Zach Ertz wants to show his best too. But Terry McLaurin, who's been very vocal, been cool to see him go far in the playoffs this year with Jaden Daniels. You feel like Jaden Daniels should run up against a buzzsaw at this point and a veteran team and a really a juggernaut built sort of team like the Eagles are. And you think that they're luck, if as it were, is going to run out. The streak's got to end at some point, but who knows? It could be seeing Jaden Daniels in New Orleans in the Super Bowl, but it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a phenomenal game from him, but credit to him. Certainly offensive rookie of the year, no question. And in a first year, we haven't seen a rookie debut like this since, Pat Mahomes, the guys like that. It's really impressive to see. But moving on to the Bills and the Chiefs, the Chiefs at home again. It's one of the toughest places to play in the league. Bills 0-3 against Pat Mahomes in the playoffs. We know that offensively they have shown up throughout this playoff. We know that Josh Allen, an MVP front runner, has been really great. That defense just has not shown up at all as far as the Bills is concerned. And we know Pat Mahomes, regardless of what kind of season he had, and Travis Kelce, if they had down seasons, as far as numbers are concerned, they're going to show up. And Andy Reid, a huge X factor, has the Bills number and has the AFC's number overall. And I feel like it's just all signs pointing to, you can put Taylor Swift as a ratings boost in there or whatever you want, whatever kind of narrative, or the refs backing them. Chiefs just look like they're poised for a 3rd straight Super Bowl at this point. But what do the Bills have to do to beat the Chiefs on Sunday, Ross?
Josh Allen has to be Superman, in my opinion. He's got to put his team on his back like he has been all year, and he's got to be the point guard, the shooting guard. He's got to get the rebounds. He's got to do everything. And again, it's very similar to how the Eagles play football, even how the Chiefs have played football this year. It's kind of why I like the under in this football game. You've got to have these long, drawn-out, methodical drives. The best thing you could do with Pat Mahomes is keep his ass on the sidelines, and keep him off the football field. And so I think that what the Bills want to do is they want to use a lot of Josh Allen in the running game. They want to lean on Jared Cook as well in the running game and in the passing game, and try and really just get methodical, and especially because it's going to be cold as well in Kansas City, and try and get down the field. And then when you're in the red zone, you have to come away with 7 points almost every time. And that's when Josh Allen is so awesome, because he can use his legs or he can use his arm to get in the end zone. The last time these two teams played, Cook had 2 touchdowns. So I expect, again, another heavy dose of him, especially you get a guy like Chris Jones who's going to want to be coming up the field and trying to attack Josh Allen. The best way you can do that and exhaust him is get this running game going. And then, of course, even if you don't have Cook around the goal line, you've got a quarterback who's 6'5", he's 270 pounds. He's a massive. Try tackling that guy when it's 15 degrees outside. So I think that's what the Bills have to do. And, obviously, on the flip side of the football, it'd be nice if you can get a takeaway from Pat Mahomes. Anytime you can get a takeaway from him, that would be helpful. Maybe do what the Texans couldn't do last week, which is actually guard Travis Kelce for a change. I mean, he looked like he was running in mud last week, and he had like 20, nobody around him within 20 yards. It was completely insane to me. And, most importantly, you have to play smart, fundamentally sound football against the Chiefs. You can't have the penalties. Can't have the turnovers because they're going to make you pay. Everybody talks about the refs are in on the Chiefs. It's not the case. They just, there are some questionable calls, sure. But at the end of the day, the Chiefs play smart, right? Fundamentally sound football. They don't make the mistakes that other teams make this time of year. And I think that's going to be a big thing. I like this. I like both teams a lot. I think this is going to be fun. This has turned into probably the best rivalry we have in the NFL right now, Josh Allen versus Pat Mahomes.
Yes, sir.
But I think this one's Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen is just he's on another path this year. He's like the Grim Reaper guy. He's just taking quarterbacks out, like take out bye Lamar Jackson. He's just taking these dudes out one by one. And I think he knocks off Pat Mahomes this week, and I think we get a Bills-Eagles Super Bowl.
I know a lot of people would like a breath of fresh air in there. So you said Bills, Eagles. I'm sticking with my Chiefs and Eagles prediction. Speaking of the Super Bowl, SZA in with Kendrick at the halftime show.
Preview to the tour.
How could you not? What's that?
Preview to the tour. They have a tour coming up this summer.
Yes, they do. And preview to that. Oh boy, it's going to be something else. Very excited, but we're running out of show here. Let's talk quickly about the Oscar nominations. I'm really going to try this year, Ross. I'm trying to watch all these Oscar nominations. I'll probably lead with the longest of the bunch and the brutalist. I saw Dune Part 2, of course, which was a banger. Definitely want to watch it. Complete Unknown, as I'm a Bob Dylan fan. But as far as we knew that a lot of these films were going to be on there. Did you have a reaction as far as snubs or anything that surprised you?
No, I don't think there were too many snubs to me. I've seen most of these movies by now. I wish Sing Sing would have got a Best Oscar nomination for Best Picture. I just don't think it's showing anywhere enough for that to happen, which I think is a mistake on A24 is the one that produced it. I think they put all their eggs into the Brutalist basket and they kind of left Sing Sing out to dry. I love Nickel Boys being in there. Amazing film. You guys have to watch that. Shout out to Demi Moore. That was my favorite performance this year. The Substance is one of my 5 favorite movies this year. And what she did in that movie is absolutely unreal. If you guys are a fan of Demi Moore and body horror, make sure you watch The Substance if you haven't seen it already. Kieran Culkin is going to win an Oscar for being Kieran Culkin from what he's always played, even going back to Succession. And then he got his old running mate Jeremy Strong got a Best Supporting nomination as well for playing Roy Khan in The Apprentice, which is the Trump movie. So there's a lot of fun movies on this list. I saw Conclave. The only one I do need to go back to, the big one obviously is Emilia Perez. It has 13 nominations. I started it. I started it one night. I got about 15 minutes into it. I heard the first song and I was like, I'm not in the right frame of mind for this. So I promise I will come back to Amelia Perez within the next week and see if it's worth the 13 nominations.
Yeah, that's fair. And as I mentioned, A24 just really just leading the way. I feel like with The Brutalist and with Sing Sing and some great projects. Nosferatu, it feels like horror is getting a good moment too, with Nosferatu being included in there. And I feel like with challengers, with all the hype that I still on my list, I think get a Best Picture nod. I thought that would have at least been nominated a bit more. Yeah, as Nosferatu, I feel like at least got a few nominations, but outside of that, it feels like this is right where the list should have been. I feel like Wicked probably got a little more credit late in the game than they should have in this position. But I'm excited to see. I also forgot that Conan O'Brien will be hosting the Oscars, and we got a crack at this list starting this weekend, Ross. We shall see.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see Conan. He's the perfect guy that you want for this, especially after what happened in LA. He's going to be able to toggle the line of the sympathy and the empathy with the fires, but also bring some humor to it and bring some security that you need from a veteran guy like him that's been in the industry for a long time to navigate that show. So it should be a fun show. I'm excited for it. There's some good movies out there if you haven't seen a lot of these movies on the list. Nora is an awesome movie too. I love that movie.
Mm-hmm. Any other parting thoughts, Ross, as we wrap up the show?
No, I'm a little sad that this is the last real weekend that we have of football. After this, it goes dark for a little while. We got the Super Bowl, obviously, in a couple of weeks, but
terrible.
Yeah, terrible. Relish the moment. Have some fun this weekend. Hopefully, we get 2 really good games. That's the most important thing, and hope we get some instant classics. And go Ben Johnson. The Bears reeled in the big fish. I think everybody needs to be excited about that.
Everybody's excited about that in Chicago. And again, hopefully we get some competitive games this Sunday, sort of old against the new with Commanders and the Eagles. And then, part 4 of this, whatever it is, in the playoffs with Mahomes versus Josh Allen. So it's going to be a fun one. Thanks to everybody for watching. We got a lot of folks on YouTube. If we didn't get to you, we apologize, but tune in next week. We will dissect the games from Sunday and talk more about the Bears and beyond. And follow us on social media. Follow me at The Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Reed, and follow Barroom Network at Barroom Network on social media, of course, for all breaking Bears news and coverage in the offseason and beyond. If you missed any of the show, it'll be up on YouTube after this. Listen on the audio-only versions on Spotify, Apple. Remember, like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. But for now, everybody have a great rest of your week. Be good to each other out there. So long.
Peace.